American Islamic preacher claims LGBT rights are not human rights. During a seminar in Dearborn, Michigan, Islamic preacher Ali Hassan delivered a provocative critique of the Western conception of human rights, claiming that the principles enshrined in the Geneva Convention and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights were derived from Islamic teachings. Hassan, addressing the largest Muslim community in the US, stated, quote, the oldest definition, the oldest place of what is human rights, it was found in the Hadith, not 75 years ago, not after World War II, but when the Prophet Muhammad came to us. He controversially asserted that American capitalism is the biggest terrorist threat today and dismissed LGBT rights as non essential, calling them civil rights, but they are not human rights. This bold stance highlights a deep cultural and ideological divide on the interpretation of human rights and their origins. So let's watch the clip. And I actually did watch his full speech. Um because I always want to
The
watch when I
articles
can, I go watch the full
of
speech. Oops, because I don't want to take people out of context. You know what I mean? But let's watch the clip.
within these 30 articles of universal human rights that secular nations have created to implement upon Muslims and say that we don't have a grasp of human rights. Well, when in fact, we are the teachers of human rights. The American dollar and capitalism has been the greatest terrorist in in the modern age. They claim a certain group of individuals are a terrorist group. Even within the Geneva Accords, it talks about the right to resistance. And it's quite interesting how they implement their law. Even a resistance force, if they don't like it, they'll just say, oh, it's a terrorist group. So they find loopholes. They find loopholes. The oldest definition or the oldest placement of what is human rights was found in the Hadith. Not 75 years ago, not after World War II, but when Rasulullah ﷺ came to us to say that we are the terrorists and we are the ones that are doing this, even though we have developed the most, we have rules for warfare. If you look at the Geneva Convention, the convention, those rulings are not just based off of their own accord. They took rulings from the Quran and traditional Islamic studies, and they also took it from biblical sources. They took it from both sources, and they implemented Islamic sources, Islamic law, Sharia, on the Geneva Accord. This is not something that they developed. They took it from us. We have to be the ones that say, no, this is not allowed. Even within our societies, allowing for things like the alphabet people, to implement their ideas of what it means to be moral. We have to be the ones to teach them, no, this is not a humanitarian issue. These are not rights that are endowed upon you. These might be civil rights, but they're not human rights. They're not humanitarian rights. And then they use it to weaponize against us. We have to be the ones that teach.
Okay. So I went to go watch his full speech. And by the way, one thing I want to know is how does Memory TV find all these? There's got to be like an army of interns at Memory TV watching the live
Yeah.
streams of damn near every masjid in the US and France and Lebanon. I don't know how they find all of this. Because sometimes it's like a really obscure mosque, like in Pullman, Washington or something. And I'm like, who the fuck? How do you find this? Okay. But this is a masjid in Dearborn, so it's like gonna be way bigger. Anyways, I just want to know what kind of weaponization is memory have here? How do they find these people? I just need to know. So, anyways, like I said, it's always important for me to try to take people in context. So I went to go watch his full speech. And so here's like I took notes on his full speech, and here's like a broad overview of all of his talking points. So basically he's saying, oh no, Islamic teaching is the real basis of human rights because it has like imparted us this knowledge about rights and justice, and not only for humans but for animals and for trees. And it's like even cups have rights. Your hand has a right, because on the day of judgment, if you've murdered someone, your hand will speak against you. It's like, how is that a right? Wait, now I'm confused.
Your dick
Okay,
will speak against you as well. Your dick will speak against you as well
wait.
at the day of the judgment.
Okay, that's okay. This is a
Your
tangent, but I
dick.
need to know
We have speaking. We have speaking dicks in Islam. Just to be clear, I don't know if they have rights.
what when you can't keep it in your pants, your dick will speak against you on the day
I
of
mean,
judgment.
basically every part of your body that you have used to sin with, at the day of judgment, will speak out and testify against your sins and how you use that part of your body to sin, whether if it's your hand, your eye, your tongue. And they say they make it clear every part of your body, which includes your dick.
Mamma mia. Holy crap. You know, still after all these years, I learned something that takes my breath away. Okay. So,
There we
and
go.
then he goes on to talk about how, oh, this idea of the concept of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is new. It's only 75 years old, but we have roughly 75 years old. But we have Islamic Sharia, we have Islamic morality, we have what has been revealed to us, 1400 years ago. And actually, it's actually longer than that. It's since the time of Adam, in their conception of it, right? So this is long, and really we've imparted this to them. And then he has the classic kind of critique against the secular liberal worldview, which is that this is just it's not objective, that our morality is objective. Our morality is given to us by God. It's clear. Theirs is fickle. It'll change over time. It'll adapt. It's man-made. And so that means that it's flawed. It's not true. Um, he goes on to talk about, he basically just says American capitalism is terrorism and then just doesn't explain what he means by that.
Come on.
Then he talks
Those
about
Jews.
the perceived um hypocritical nature of the secular human rights regime, meaning like, oh, the violations of America, the violations of Israel, they're failing to uphold it. They're just hypocrites. Um, when it comes to Israel, they've violated every single declaration in Gaza except for the right to marriage, because people can still marry. Then he talks about how yeah, it's superior, it's objective, it's so much longer, it's so comprehensive. They have environmental protections in Islamic Sharia. There's dictations for how to conduct yourself during warfare, and that's why he starts talking about the trees, because that's a thing in the jurisprudence. um then yeah, and how subjective it is. This is just a human construction, but we have divine ordinance. um then he talks about how, like, he makes this claim that this all comes from the Sharia and this all comes from the Hadith. I found absolutely no evidence to support that. um and basically that, oh, this idea that, there's individual dignity in Islamic teaching, and this is a constant truth, versus, again, the secular framing has these shifting norms. And basically he ends with this call to action, to this demand that we, the Muslims, have to teach them what is human rights. We have to teach them what is understood in Islam, and that includes things like recent conflicts, or it can include environmental crises. So he talks about how, like, the water purity crisis in Flint, Michigan, like, we need to go out and show them how to handle this. We need to go out and show them how they should be treating the community, like all this stuff. So
I
I can
mean,
unpack
like,
it a little
I
bit
mean,
more,
this
but
is,
I want
but
Armin's, like, Armin, what's your initial reaction?
First of all, this last point you made, this is exactly why, Susanna, Islamic countries right now are the most prosperous, the most economically advanced, the most technologically advanced, with the highest amount of peace, stability, and well-being of people. And yeah, this is exactly why, because Muslims just know how to do it. I mean, you could see based on the data available, just compare Islamic countries to non-Islamic countries and how far ahead Islamic countries are. When it comes to human rights, guys, human rights is not a very is not by itself, because a lot of people, when we say human rights, they think we're talking about the correct human rights that are all good and they are all been written properly and they are the best version of them, because human rights have been a thing forever, even before civilization. As soon as you get 5 people or 50 people in a tribe, and you have certain limitations of what you could do to other people, that's human rights. I mean, we had human rights written on the Hammurabi. Okay, so it's basically more, earlier versions of human rights, and then the more advanced versions of human rights. It's not like, oh my god, the Western enlightenment, liberal countries, they didn't nobody claims that they introduced human rights. We're just suggesting that the liberal order have introduced a much more advanced and better version of human rights. So if you go and say like,
And
oh, look at that, we
systematized
had,
it. We systematized it as
yes.
well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you go back and say like, "Oh my God, look, we had rights back before Western countries had rights," like you don't fucking say. Of course, any form of society to be able to function needs to have limitations of what people could do to each other, and that would be human rights. Okay, so for example, if you go read the Hammurabi, it says like, I don't know, if you're building this house and you build it wrong, then we will fucking execute you. Like, I mean, that is human rights, because they are basically, I mean, it's a very violent and barbaric version of human rights. Yeah, I mean, the eye for an eye came from the Hammurabi before it was in the Bible. I mean, you're protecting the rights of the person, maybe in a very barbaric, weird way, but you're basically protecting the rights of the person that just had their eyes pulled out, right? Um, I mean, for example, if you say we'll cut off the hands of a thief, that is technically also part of human rights. I mean, it's very barbaric, but you're saying people have the right not for their property to be stolen. So human rights inherently is not the best. Like, if something is human right, it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that it's been written in the proper way. It's still human rights. And when he says these are civil rights, they're not human rights. I don't understand this. Civil rights of who? Is civil rights of humans? Then they're human rights. It's not civil rights of, I don't know, dogs. It's not the civil rights of like tigers. The civil rights of humans. Then inherently they will, any rights of humans will become human rights. And
No,
he
he's
talks about it.
basically saying that that's, like, something that a
And
nation give you. It's not universal. He no, he even
yeah,
makes the point
so
that no, Armin, I have to say this, I have to say this. He makes the point that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are not universal because they have not existed for all men, for all mankind, because they
right.
were
So
created
that's
75 years
basically
ago. Like, that's his level of
he's under,
analysis.
so religious people and people who believe in Kant's version of deontological view of ethics, both the virtue ethicists, deontologists, and uh, people who have the divine command theory, believe in divine command theory, which is these are different frameworks of looking at morality and stuff. All of these people believe that rights and ethics is something that is within the fabric of the fucking universe, that you go discover it, right? But this is not how utilitarianists look at ethics or laws or standards. These are something that we make. These are not something that you discover. These are something that you make. And when religious people, when they have the mindset that these are some things that exist within the fabric of the universe and you go discover it, then they go and see that, oh, we actually had these before you had it, so we were in the process of discovering this before you discovered it. But they don't, these are all human made. There is no inherent rights, there are no natural rights. These are all man made, and they are man made for a good reason, because they fucking work. And yes, you had those before, you made those before. These are all, these are not god given, these are not nature given, these are human made. And some humans have made them better than other humans, and the Western liberal order has created the best version of it so far. You had these before, but they are inferior. They're inferior to the modern versions of them. That's the way you have to look at it, right? And when they say we did this much before you guys did it, they don't, before everyone else. That's also historically inaccurate, because Islam, before Islam, we had a whole, these rights were, we had human rights before Islam. Okay, but they cheat by saying Islam started with Adam. I mean, Islam is actually Islam is beyond time and space. So our understanding of history is that Islam started, I mean, it 1300 years ago, not 1400 years ago, actually 1300 years ago, right? Their understanding is that Islam was, Prophet Adam was Muslim, Prophet Jesus was Muslim, Prophet Moses was Muslim. So basically, by doing that fucking, by saying that stupid lie, any standard, any ever in history will become Islamic. So Hammurabi would be Islam. If I was like, oh no, look, Hammurabi, the Hammurabi is older than Islam. Well, no, it ain't apparently, because Islam was here since Prophet Adam on this fucking earth. Like, so, like, yeah, like they own everything now by this trick. Speaking of capitalism, guys, human rights always has economic interest behind it. The reason human rights are not something that is given. Human rights is not something that is exists within the fabric of nature, or it's not something that is God given. Human rights is something that is taken, that is fought for. And the human rights is something that humans get when they have power over the people who rule over them. And that power mostly comes in the form of economic power. And capitalism has been the main force behind human rights, because capitalism has increased the economic powers of the masses. And because the economic powers of the masses has increased, that has led to democracy and more human rights. So if you're looking for human rights, I say this as an activist. I say this as an activist. Activism has not been the main source of human rights. Capitalism has been the main source of human rights, because capitalism has increased the economic powers of the masses, and the economic powers of the masses has led to the political power of the masses. And the political power of the masses brings you more human rights. I mean, there's a reason why we care about human rights in richer countries compared to African countries. There's a reason why when, yeah, LGBT people became richer, they managed to, LGBT rights became more, a bigger deal. There's a reason why when Jewish people became richer, Jewish anti-Semitism became more and more disgusting globally. Because when you have economic power, you get political power. And also when it says like, oh, they see, they give us a right to resistance, but they don't see our resistance as a form of, they see a terrorism rather than fighting for our rights. Well, because your forms of resistance are the type of resistance when people try to give you the things you wanted, you claimed you wanted, they realize those are not the things that you actually want. You actually wanted to wipe out all the Jews. Okay, so yeah, if that's
Yeah,
what you
the
want.
tactics involved. So when he's, that's an important point, Armin. When he's saying that
Mm,
he's basically justifying and whitewashing and tacitly endorsing Hamas, I want people to be aware of
right.
that. That's what he's doing. And part of the reason why it's considered that way is because of the tactics involved. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It's because of their
Mhm.
methodology.
Right. So here's something I say that some of you might not like, okay? But I will clarify so that you understand what I'm saying. Does Islam have human rights? Yes. A much more inferior version of human rights that we have today. As long as Islam says like, oh, if somebody does something to you, you could do that against, that's a version of human rights. To be honest, that's a version of human rights. Okay, but it's a version of human rights that gives humans the right to enslave people and to rape people that you have captured in war. It's a version of human rights that is inferior to our modern version of human rights because it tells you that as soon as you capture a woman in battle, her marriage to her husband will be nullified, and now you can rape her as your sex slave. So yes, Islam has human rights, but this is the version of human rights that it has. Islam has a version of human rights that you could force yourself upon your wife, and that would not be that's allowed. Islam has a version of human rights that every man is allowed to beat his wife. Not allowed, it's commanded to beat his wife. Okay, these are human. That's a right. That is a human right to the husband. I mean, at the same time, the what like I wouldn't deny Islam gives some rights to the wife. So, for example, in Islam, a free wife of a Muslim man has more rights than the slave of a Muslim man. So there
Sure.
are some rights recognized there, right? But it's a
Certain
version.
rights to be
But she
provided
doesn't.
for example.
Right. So exactly. So, like, for example, in Islam, a wife has more rights than a slave. So there are some rights there, but she's also but she doesn't have the right to not be beaten by her husband. So these are all rights, but they're way, way, way in. We don't deny that Islam introduced human rights before the Western countries did, with Western civilization, modern Western civilization did. We don't deny that, but it's so far inferior than what we have right now. But people are saying, what's a right? A right is a limitation. Your right is a limitation on someone else. If any group of people introduce a standard that limits certain people to do something so that you get to do something else, that is a right. So a right frees somebody by limiting someone else. Every right comes with a law that frees you up by limiting someone else. So societies have tried to find the right balance of freedoms and limitation to maximize freedom. To maximize freedom, we cannot just let everybody free. To maximize freedom, you actually have to create limitations. Because if you don't create those limitations, then those people could come and limit me. Anyways, you're muted.
Oh, I was saying that you did a good little unpacking. Dude, this guy pissed me off. One, no offense, he's just not a very good speaker. But two, he goes so far with his tacit endorsement of Hamas uh to call in the whitewashing that he calls the American Revolution against the British the American Intifada. So he's like, "Oh, it's just all the same thing. It's just all the same thing. It's just all the same
Mm.
resistance. It's just all the same self-determination, the American Intifada." I'm like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. No.
It's easy, these people. It's easy to they expose themselves, when they
Yeah.
talk about their rights and the things that they want to do. I mean, I know I go into a little bit more in depth on why they're wrong, but you don't need that much. Once when they talk about human rights, and then they talk at the same time, when they say that part of their rights, part of their human rights is their right to resistance, and you go look at the resistance that they're describing as resistance, and you see these are obvious acts of terror against other human beings. Are like, oh, that's what you mean by human rights. It's basically, if you connect it, it's three dots that you have to connect to each other to show what these people actually mean.
Yeah, it's not
But
difficult. Um
right.
Oh, I had something else I was going to say. I forgot. Never mind. Yeah, let's do
So
the
this one
comments.
is just Memory TV. So let's
Yeah.
go to this one.
Oh, this is just in regards to Dearborn, Michigan in general. How there was a large gathering honoring Hassan Nasrallah. Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan is a huge, one of the most important centers of the Islamic Republic implementing soft power on American soil. So I'm not surprised by that.
Oh yeah.
This person saying so for assimilation. And keep
Right.
going.
I mean, there is assimilation happening. It's just the other way around. It's reverse assimilation. But yeah,
It's not as bad as in Europe though.
yeah,
And then this was wait, scroll up. I can't remember the context of this clip.
it's the same.
Um oh no, this is for
Oh,
Ashura. Okay. Yeah.
oh.
Um
Oh, this is Ashura.
yeah. Okay. And then what's the comment? Saying OMG, not in the US, please. It has to be the last place in the world for this. There is no hope if even the US allows it. Here's the thing, like they are legally allowed to do a religious procession.
Yeah.
Like that is actually what like defines us as the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't still be skeptical and have problems with what is behind a lot of this stuff. Which oftentimes is actually explicit influence from Iran, for example, like on Al Quds Day or something. But I mean, they're allowed to do it.
The way you shut down this is that you don't let them come in from at the first place. Like you shouldn't have allowed these people to come here in the U.S., become residents and citizens. That's and also another way is to shut down their institutions, because I could tell you that I could know with close to certainty that these organizations that are doing this offshore, they're linked to IRGC, which is
Oh
a
yeah, no, I've
state
talked about
sponsor of
that
terror.
before.
Yeah, I mean, so all of these institutions should be shut down, defunded. Uh, you could arrest these people, a lot of their leaders, for having ties to the IRGC. That's what you could do. That's how you stop this. You don't stop these people by telling them that they can't come out and have this event. You go and target the roots of of this cause,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just cutting down the leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we got a couple of super chats.
Yes. Okay. Gasian once again asking his techno-apocalyptic ethical question. Say thank you for the super chat, Gasian, saying, would you consider human neurons on a chip in Australia? Why Australia? To be humans with the full rights accorded, or should we dole them out based on processing power?
It's not processing power. I don't know if you could define them as humans or not, but our rights and care for other people that should be based on their capacity to feel genuine pain and genuine happiness, like what we humans associate with misery and happiness, right? So it's not based on processing power. Any entity that could experience anything that we associate with misery, or could experience anything that we associate with pleasure and happiness, should be cared for and protected in some way based on their specific conditions. It's not based on
And
processing power or intelligence.
we got another super chat by John Smith. Thank you for the super chat, John Smith. No comment.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
supporting the channel. Oh, which is a good reminder. You
Thank you.
guys should support the channel by becoming a member. Link in the join button down below.
And before you ask, by the way, I'm not a vegetarian, and I will never be, and I could defend that, even though I care about animal rights, non-human animal rights. I care about them a lot, but I am not a vegetarian, and I could defend that forever. Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do!
And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.